Chapter 80-83. Please do not remove the babe from the tank, came Alani's voice. It was hazy and indistinct through my exhaustion, and I forced my eyes open, entire body aching and in pain. I wanted nothing more to sleep, yet they would not let me. They had changed the bedding, cleaned me up and forced me into a new, clean gown, but they would not let me sleep. I had struggled with the twins for hours. Long enough for Laner to fly to Driftmark and back. All I wanted was sleep, and yet they insisted I must feed the twins first. But I wanted to hold her, Laner whined, and I grimaced at his tone. I had bore them for nearly 35 weeks. I had pushed them from myself, I had bled and cried as they left me. She cannot yet regulate her own body temperature, chided Alanis. Renera's body will help whilst she is feeding, but she must remain in that tank at all other times. When Laner did not answer, Alanis tried a change of tact. If you parade her for all and sundry, you may kill her. One of Alanis' midwives pulled my gown open, earning them a pathetic whine that I would have been humiliated for anyone to hear, except I was too tired to care. It got Laner's attention though, and he dropped himself to my side, excited look in his eyes. Girls. Girls, Renera, he giggled, then dropped a few kisses across my brow as the midwife tried to pull me up into a sitting position. He earned a few sour looks from the woman I did not know the name of until he eventually helped, hooking his hands under my arms and hauling me up with a surprising gentleness. Although I think we may need to revisit names. Alarm flickered through me, pushing me a little more into wakefulness. Targaryens had a history of dodgy pregnancies, all dotted about the family tree. Canon Renera had given birth to a half-dragon monster just before the dance itself. What? Why? What is wrong? Realizing he had alarmed me, he raised his hands. They are fine. Fine babes. It's just Dash, he was interrupted as Alanis handed me the first babe, laying her across my chest. She was awake, unfocused violet eyes moving back and forth, seeing nothing. Unfocused violet eyes, under a head of wispy black hair. I swallowed. That would be the subject of some gossip if I knew Alicent. Hopefully she would grow to resemble Rhaenys. I don't think this one is an Alyssa, whispered Laner with quiet reverence. Gods, why was I already finding fault with them? They were my children. Not political pawns. Then I felt guilty anew because one of them was already promised to Lord Rain's firstborn son. No. Stop. Don't think about that. Focus on the babes here and now. The Rains could and would wait. This is my firstborn. I asked, and he nodded, causing a pang of sadness in my gut. I had wanted my firstborn to be Alyssa, but I could agree with him. It did not feel right to name her after the grandmother on my side when she so clearly took after Laner's mother. Rhaenys then. Rhaenys the younger. I had a different idea, he said. Something that will have mother over the moon with joy. Go on, I said as she began to wiggle against me, seeking out a source of food. He was distracted for a while, watching as his firstborn child began her feeding with a look of wonder in his eyes and his fist crammed into his mouth, presumably so he didn't giggle like the absolute dork he was. Jocelyn, he finally said. We name her Jocelyn and the other Alyssa. She has our hair. Hello, Jocelyn, I said. She ignored us both in favor of her meal. You're right, your mother will be over the moon. Where is she now? I expected her to arrive with you. Oh. Cleaning Lena up. You made quite the mess. I didn't have any answer to that. She had been there through it all, and yet I could barely remember her through the haze of pain and the feeling I was being torn open from the inside. I cradled Jocelyn close for a long time, long after she'd finished feeding. Both of us just watching her eyes open and close as she fought the need to sleep. Finally, she was taken from me to be placed in her cradle, and Alyssa was handed to me. She was small. Heartbreakingly tiny. Smaller even than Jocelyn. Like Laner had said, she was violet-eyed and silver-haired, and I wanted to clutch her close as if my will for her to live was all that was keeping her alive. I understood their unspoken worry now. Babes this small did not have a high chance of surviving to see their 6th month. It took some persuasion on my part to get her to latch on, and when she finally took her first few swallows she coughed and sputtered, prompting a wailing cry. I soothed her as best as I could, coaxing her back to her meal as Laner fretted over us both. She did take her fill in the end, and Alanis had her back in the tank with speed that spoke of practice. The tank was an incubator really, the first one ever to be used. It was too expensive to commission many yet, not before the glassworks was up and running. The design was based off of the one they had used for chickens since the Undulls came to Westeros and brought it over with them. Yet no one in all those years had looked at the chicken incubator and gone, hey, we can use that for our babies too. It was a similar story on Earth, that such a simple idea could not be put into use until the 1800s. It was also very, very useful in the matter of premature babies. They could lower the chance of death by 1/3. That had been the statistic I had written down in my papers. I had to remember that, I had to believe that. A warm box, heated by a hot water bottles with a glass lid could be the difference between my babes living and dying. Laner took my hand and smiled. I could see now that he had been crying, I could see the tear tracks on his face. Ready for some visitors? I have no doubt your father resents being held in the drawing room for so long. I managed a weak chuckle at that. I had no doubt he'd be ready to kick the door in with impatience. Visitors I would likely receive aplenty in the coming days. Anyone who could justify access to the manse would be eager to meet the children. It was only proper though that Viserys and Alicent were the first. It did not take long for them to get to the room after Laner gave the order for them to be fetched. My father arrived pale and worried, and upon seeing me awake even if barely, he sighed in relief. Even Alicent, who arrived at a more sedate pace, managed a tight smile. Although she no doubt wanted time to grieve for her father, she did not want to be here celebrating my children's birth. I saw the exact moment she laid her eyes on Jocelyn though. Her eyes lit up as if she had just been given some grand present completely unexpectedly. No doubt the black hair, let her try and capitalize on that. Rhaenys would feed anyone who dared imply her a bastard to malaise. Black of hair, she asked, feigning a puzzled look and immediately bringing Viserys bustling over to examine her. Alicent's green eyes swept from Jocelyn to Alyssa, where they narrowed. Oh, but this one has the Targaryen look. I wished I had the strength to rise from this bed and kick her teeth in. Her father's body was not even cold and she was preparing for her next scheme. Viserys winced and Alicent realized her mistake a moment later as Laenor frowned. She takes after her grandmother. I trust you do not intend to tell her she does not have the Targaryen look, he said, and Alicent was quick to backpedal. Not even her status as Viserys' wife would save her from getting drop-kicked into the Blackwater by an enraged Rhaenys. My mistake. It was merely something of a surprise. You both bear the classic Valyrian look, she said hastily. But the Baratheon coloring has proved persistent in the past. Have you decided on names? Asked Viserys, hopeful for any distraction from the sudden awkward turn the conversation had taken. Jocelyn, for my firstborn, I told him. He dropped a hand to the wooden rail of the crib and smiled down at his firstborn grandchild. Jocelyn, for Rhaenys' mother I presume, he asked, then turned to the tank and moved on without waiting for a reply. And the second? I gave him a broad smile, sensing his reaction to the next name might be slightly less restrained, even if it were not for the same reasons I had wanted my daughter named as such. Alyssa. He swallowed at my pronouncement and turned a teary stare on the smaller twin, still nestled in her box. You have named them after the great-grandmothers, I see, said Alicent as Viserys tried to recover himself, tried not to break down over the name of his grandchild. Laenor nodded my answer for me, even if it had not been intentional, the symmetry was still as pleasing as Valyna and Alyssa. When they are bigger, I expect plenty of attention from their grandfather, I told him, and he laughed. The stranger himself could not stop me. Grandchildren. Look at them. My little dragons. I wish Emma could have met them. The reminder of her loss so soon after new life made my insides twist. Judging from the look Alicent shot him, she hadn't taken that any better than I had. I wish that too, I said hoarsely. But I will read to them like she did for me in her memory. As long as they do not invade the library half as much as you did, he laughed. Nothing was as troublesome as you deciding to use some new phrase you'd read in front of the wrong people. Ha, all of that was on purpose. They are her children, said Laenor, shooting me a fond smile. They will be terrors, but they will be clever and fierce as well. I hope they take after you instead. Giving me children just like I was seems too close to punishment. Viserys roared with laughter at that, and even Alicent's lips twitched into an unwanted smile. She and I had gotten into our fair share of mischief when I had been just a child, desperately trying to make her love me. I watched as Viserys' eyes drifted back to Alyssa, softening with love. Your Grace, it has nearly been an hour since the last feeding, Alenys informed us, making us all jump with the reminder of her existence. Had it truly been an hour? Did I really have to feed them every hour? Of course, said Viserys before making his way over to me. He bundled me into a tight hug, burying his face into my hair. Be well, daughter. I shall visit as soon as I am able tomorrow. You focus on the children, focus on healing. There will be much to be done in the coming months. Of course. Dorn. The war that would take Lena from her son and Laner from his daughters. The war that would take them from me. Of course, father. Laner saw them out with a bow before making his way back to my side. Alanis waylaid him with a bundle I could only assume was Jocelyn. I watched as he practically melted as he brought her over, violet eyes threatening tears. Alanis helped me with my gown and soon enough Jocelyn was back on my breast. You will only need to do this for the first few days. Then it will be every 3 to 4 hours, she told me, and I resisted the urge to groan. Why had I agreed to feed them myself? Oh yes, Nika wedding terror that I'd somehow kill them by giving them over to nursemaids. I examined the tiny child at my breast and couldn't quite suppress a smile as she wiggled against me. They're beautiful, said Laner. Of course they are. Was my reply. They're ours. Jocelyn, repeated Rhaenys, faintly. Behind her, Corley's face lit up with a smile that he directed squarely at his wife's back. With shaking hands she leaned over and took the child from her son. Then she sniffled. Laner caught my eye and smiled as if he wasn't teary-eyed himself. As if I weren't teary-eyed myself. Hello Jocelyn, she murmured, a tiny fist was waved at her and the telltale sounds of Jocelyn about to let everyone know she was unhappy were the only sounds in the room. The queen who never was stared, entranced for a while, as Jocelyn continued to fight and struggle. And then she broke, cradling the babe close to her chest as she stared at us with tears running down her face. She's perfect, she managed to say after a moment. She's perfect. Gently and reluctantly she handed Jocelyn to Corlys, who took his first granddaughter and gazed at her with a smile. Rhaenys stepped forward suddenly and flung her arms around her son, pulling him close until I heard the whoosh of breath out of his body. Then, after a moment where I thought he might actually start struggling against her, she released him. Her arms were around my shoulders next, a fierce hug but much gentler than the one Laner had been subject to. I let myself sink into it, missing my mother and remembering those days where Rhaenys had been the only one I could trust in the face of a fate worse than death. When her love had not been conditional on what babes I pumped out. They're both perfect, she whispered before pulling back and giving me a watery smile. Let me give her an egg from Malaise. That caught me completely by surprise and I felt a pang of loss. I had wanted to give them eggs from Syrax, but looking at Rhaenys' hopeful face, I couldn't say no. Besides, I could give Alice an egg from Syrax when the time came. When they were both able to be placed in the crib. That would be wonderful, I said, and a grin lit up Rhaenys' face. I was saved from her overwhelming happiness by Lena stepping in. Rhaenyra. Oh, hello mother. She looked completely taken back at how emotional her mother was. Even more so when she too was swept into a bone-crushing hug. Rhaenyra, your ladies are here, she managed to say when she'd wriggled free of Rhaenys, who was right back to cooing over Jocelyn with her husband and son. I swallowed thickly and my eyes met Laner's, who had evidently overheard Lena's information. He gave me a nod and then raised his hand to his mother's elbow, steering her and Jocelyn over to the crib. Corley seemed to get his son's plan a moment later, but it still took a few minutes for her to finish her gushing goodbye to both the babes. Not that Alice noticed. Alice was fast asleep. Then Laner herded them out, dropping one last kiss on my forehead as I rearranged the silk robe I wore over my nightgown. The one decorated with seahorses and silver because I'd stolen it gleefully from Laner. I'm sure I looked a fright. I'd managed a few hour-long naps, broken only by the need to feed the babes. Even then I did that zombie-like and only half aware of Alanis and her co-worker doing most of the work for me. I would have to do something nice for Laner. It had been his brave and much appreciated sacrifice in the face of his mother that bought that time. Still, I was sure my ladies had seen me looking worse. Rhaenyra. Maria threw her arms about me as best she could. It startled a laugh from me. We feared for you after Lena told us the babes came early. Oh, did she now? I am well enough now. The babes too, I told her, nodding in their direction. She gave the tank a puzzled look and Lena launched into an explanation of their purpose. I noted, with a smile, how her hand rested protectively on it. Might we see them? When are they being announced? I smiled at the anxious tone and the way my ladies were trying their best to not overtly peer too intently. By all means. Just do not remove the glass over Alyssa. She was born too small. Lena dropped into the chair next to the bed as I seated myself somewhat gingerly on the mattress. As the small crowd drifted over the newborns and the exclamations of delight sprang up, a wailing cry of unhappiness told me they'd woken Jocelyn from her sleep. I grimaced. "What are their names?" asked Felena, after spending a few moments cooing to the wailing Jocelyn. They wanted to lift her up, I could tell. "Jocelyn, for the black-haired babe. You may hold her." This provoked another round of cooing as Jocelyn was passed back and forth, screaming the entire time. "And Alyssa for the silver-haired babe." I waited until they were distracted before meeting Sarah's eye and summoning her over with a quirk of my head. Lena watched her carefully as she reached me, looking decidedly puzzled at why she'd been called away from the babes. "I ask your permission, but I had hoped to refer to Alyssa by a shortened version of her name." "Alice." The strong girl's eyes widened and then she turned away to hide the tears that threatened, and I had to dab at my own eyes in turn. Thankfully, the rest of the ladies' attention did not waver from my babes as they pointed out little details to each other. Although how they could do so over the racket Jocelyn was making was beyond me. Judging from Lena's grimace, she was thinking about profusely thanking the mother for Luceri's lack of tantrums. Jocelyn could even wail whilst feeding, a feat Lena assured me was quite impressive. She would have loved that, Sarah managed after a moment. "Oh, I wish she were here to see them. She'd love them, Renera, she really would." A moment later, Lena surprised me by standing and drawing the strong girl into a hug. Perhaps I shouldn't be surprised, given that I could just hear her own sniffles alongside Sarah's. "I miss her too," my lover mumbled, and Sarah nodded. Then they broke apart as Felena cleared her throat. "Septon Patrek sends his regards, Renera. He says that he and his followers pray for you and the twins. They wish you a fast recovery," she said. I was willing to bet he did. The gold cloaks might no longer be an issue, but those knights had not ceased their harassment, and with Joffrey focused on Alice Killer, the mystery of who sent them was still unsolved. "Enough of the religion, Fal," said Maris, passing Jocelyn to her. "We are here for the babes." Surprisingly, that did not provoke an argument between the two. Instead, Felena took Jocelyn and smiled at her, ear-splitting cries and all. My ladies stayed for a good long while, and I realized, much to my surprise, I'd missed them all fiercely. So when they left, I told them in my best commanding tone that I expected them to return to their roles as soon as they were able. From the reaction, I deduced they were quite happy at the prospect. I still missed Alice. It felt wrong not having her there to teach the twins some diabolical trick I'd inevitably fall for, but, well, Sarah had been right. Alice would not have wanted me to drive my ladies away. At least Jocelyn had gone back to sleep, lulled there by Maris singing Vale lullabies until even I'd felt somewhat sleepy. "I feared you would never call us back," said Lena, reminding me she was still there lest I spend the next hour lost in my own thoughts. "How are you feeling?" "I am sore." "Very sore," I told her, and she ran her hand down my arm as if she could drive away the pain. "Your mother wants to give Jocelyn an egg from Malaise." Her lips quirked into an amused smile at that. "She'll spoil Jocelyn rotten," she told me. "I know. Still, father will spoil Alice rotten, so I imagine it will all balance out." She laughed, and then her face went thoughtful as she gazed at me. "What? Do I have something on my face?" "Oh no, did I do my gown up after I fed Alice and Jocelyn?" A quick check told me I had, so why was she? My train of thought shuddered to a halt as she clambered onto the bed and laid next to me, dropping a long kiss to my lips. I groaned at the feel of it, burying my hand in her ringlets and pulling her further down, feeling as if my heart might beat out of my chest. When I accidentally pulled her hair, she froze, going still as a statue next to me, and I drew back. She seemed far away in that moment, and then a moment later her eyes met mine and she was back in the present. "What is it?" I asked, concerned. She smiled, aiming for reassuring and falling far short of the mark. "Nothing. Nothing," she said when I continued to look unconvinced. "I am fine." As to prove her point, she leaned towards me once more, pressing into me as if she could use her body to convince me I hadn't seen what I thought I had. Fear. Before I could pull away again to confront her, an obviously fake cough made us both freeze. My heart practically stopped, and from the whoosh of breath that left Lena, I guessed she was in the same boat. The silence felt like it went on forever, but it was only a second or two before the interloper spoke. "You really should latch the door if you intend to do that," came Joffrey's clearly amused voice, and I groaned in relief. That could have been bad. Latching the door would be a high priority for the future. Joffrey, I'm going to kill you, Lena whined, swinging herself off the bed with a sigh. My spymaster's grin only widened in response, then he limped over to the children and examined them in the same way he looked at Lucerys. I didn't miss the fond smile on Lena's face as she watched him. I would have to create a will, have Lena and Joffrey named the chosen guardians should Laenor and I die before their majority. The fact that it was a real possibility made me want to throw up a little. I did not want what happened to Aegon Dragonbane to happen to any of my kids. They'd be cared for by someone who loved them. Someone who could tell them about me without the bias and the politics. You have quite the serious look on your face, observed Joffrey as he made his way back to both of us. What has you brooding now? I'm not Dash, I started much to both Lena and Joffrey's amusement. I was thinking on who would be the guardians of my children if something should happen to me. Ah, said Joffrey. Is this because of, what was his name? Aegon? His regents caused him endless problems, yes? Lena seemed proud that she could finally engage with us on that level and I couldn't help sending a raised eyebrow Joffrey's way. She was fretting whilst you slept. Telling her what you told us was a better method than physically sitting on her, he explained with a shrug, sending Lena a vibrant red. You couldn't sit on me if you tried, she mumbled when she saw my evident amusement. At the comment, Joffrey grinned again before his eyes became serious. I tensed without meaning to and even Lena focused on him in the wake of his change in demeanor. I expect we'll hear from Lord Rain within the next few weeks, but I would like your permission to invite him to the capital to negotiate the finer details of the betrothal in person. The War Council will be a fine cover, he said. Breath was hard to draw for a moment until Lena dropped a hand to my shoulder. Worse betrothals have been made for worse reasons. Think of my own unfortunate one. Taikio was she paused, struggling for the right word. I believe you referred to him as Bravo's village idiot, Joffrey supplied and she nodded violently, sending her mussed ringlets dancing about her face. Yes, thank you, Joffrey. Do you know he once got drunk, came to my rooms, stripped naked and lay on my bed? He passed out before I got there and a maid found him but still, then she seemed to remember where she was. You can ask for Lord Rain's son to be a squire for Laenor. Then you get to influence him, see him grow into a man with ideals of your choosing. Not a bad idea, actually. Still. I don't care what contract is in place, if any boy betrothed to them does that, they can expect a meeting with Syrax to explain their behavior, I said, firmly and Joffrey covered up his chuckle with a cough. You are, of course, assuming they'd reach Syrax. Laenor is likely to take exception to that too, he pointed out. He certainly took exception to Lena's ex-betrothed doing so. Lena nodded very seriously and then giggled. Still, the moment of levity did not last long. I know having them be alive and unhappy is better than dead but, I sighed. It still feels wrong. You can be assured that should any young man or woman seeking to marry Lucerys, Jocelyn or Alyssa, or indeed any of our future children, not be suitable for them, they will not make it to the ceremony. Joffrey's tone was almost cold. I shouldn't find that reassuring, but I did. Our children. Oh Joffrey, you do want one of your own, don't you? I believe you, I said. Then I took a deep breath once more. Tell me, Joffrey, how old is Kermit Tully? Jocelyn was crying. Again. Not that Lionel Strong seemed to care. Nor did his daughter. The hand had still not recovered from the loss of one of his daughters, that was as plain as the day to see. There were dark circles under his eyes and where he'd always been clean-shaven and neat, he now boasted a ragged beard and his doublet showed at least one stain. He gazed down at the babes. I had little doubt that Sarah had reported to him just how Alyssa would be referred to by everyone but Viserys. I knew this because he looked to be on the verge of weeping. I'd never really gotten to know Lionel all that well. He was my father's hand, promoted from Master of Laws after Otto's nun to gracious exit from King's Landing. Even as Master of Laws he'd been the quiet type, the get on with your job and don't rock the boat type. I knew he'd grated at Daemon's behavior just like knew he'd been all for executing him after his attack on me. He was Viserys' man. He'd sent his girls to me to tell me that. His friendship with Corlys came easily to him because he knew Corlys had a vested interest in following Viserys' wishes. Your Grace has been very kind to my family, he said and his voice was rough with emotion. Then he cleared his throat and met my eyes. Like his son, he was a handsome man, although his looks were eroding under the steady tides of age by this point. Although I wasn't sure if I was allowed to be commenting on anyone's looks given my current style was a nightgown and only getting out of bed to use the privy. Healing from birth was a slow, painful and sometimes slightly humiliating process. Soon little Alice will be big enough to survive outside of the incubator, enthused Sarah from her seat next to me. At his daughter's happiness, he smiled, but it was quickly replaced with a look of pain. Sarah would likely never bear children of her own. That she had insinuated herself as the babe's chief protector should not come as a surprise to me, yet it did. She was determined she would love them as she believed Alice would have done. As she would not be able to love her own children. The king can scarce contain himself, he pointed out. Although I suppose Harwin cannot either. I thought Sir Laner would have to restrain him from how insistent he was at getting in here. Okay, what's Harwin up to now? He has to know there's no chance of an illicit romance by now, so what figures? I pushed the worry aside. There had been no note of accusation in Lionel's voice. I apologize, but the room is not so large as to hold Laris, Harwin, Sarah and yourself all at once. It very much was, and I think Lionel knew that. The truth was I couldn't handle all four of the Strongs at once. I will send them up to you, and then Sarah can catch me up on how her day has been, said the hand. He cast one last look at the babes, bowed and left. Sarah gave me a small grin as she followed her father out. He had barely interacted with the twins during their time as my ladies. Alice's death had spurred him to be a much more involved father, it seemed. I was not allowed time to muse over the hand, however, because moments later, Harwin and Laris let themselves in. Harwin looked as well as his father did, handsome face ravaged by grief and loss. The twins and he had always been close, at least that is what I had gathered from Sarah and Alice's many stories. Laris looked as put together as ever, intelligent brown eyes taking in every detail of the room, myself and the incubator before coming once again to rest on me. Ah, said Joffrey. Is this because of, what was his name? Aegon? His regents caused him endless problems, yes? Lena seemed proud that she could finally engage with us on that level, and I couldn't help sending a raised eyebrow Joffrey's way. She was fretting whilst you slept. Telling her what you told us was a better method than physically sitting on her, he explained with a shrug, sending Lena a vibrant red. You couldn't sit on me if you tried, she mumbled when she saw my evident amusement. At the comment, Joffrey grinned again before his eyes became serious. I tensed without meaning to, and even Lena focused on him in the wake of his change in demeanor. I expect we'll hear from Lord Rain within the next few weeks, but I would like your permission to invite him to the capital to negotiate the finer details of the betrothal in person. The War Council will be a fine cover, he said. Breath was hard to draw for a moment until Lena dropped a hand to my shoulder. Worse betrothals have been made for worse reasons. Think of my own unfortunate one. Taikyo was she paused, struggling for the right word. I believe you referred to him as Bravo's village idiot, Joffrey supplied, and she nodded violently, sending her mussed ringlets dancing about her face. Yes, thank you, Joffrey. Do you know he once got drunk, came to my rooms, stripped naked and lay on my bed? He passed out before I got there and a maid found him, but still, then she seemed to remember where she was. You can ask for Lord Rain's son to be a squire for Laner. Then you get to influence him, see him grow into a man with ideals of your choosing. Not a bad idea, actually. Still. I don't care what contract is in place, if any boy betrothed to them does that, they can expect a meeting with Syrax to explain their behavior, I said, firmly, and Joffrey covered up his chuckle with a cough. You are, of course, assuming they'd reach Syrax. Laner is likely to take exception to that too, he pointed out. He certainly took exception to Lena's ex-betrothed doing so. Lena nodded very seriously and then giggled. Still, the moment of levity did not last long. I know having them be alive and unhappy is better than dead, but, I sighed. It still feels wrong. You can be assured that should any young man or woman seeking to marry Lucerys, Jocelyn, or Alyssa, or indeed any of our future children, not be suitable for them, they will not make it to the ceremony. Joffrey's tone was almost cold. I shouldn't find that reassuring, but I did. Our children. Oh Joffrey, you do want one of your own, don't you? I believe you, I said. Then I took a deep breath once more. Tell me, Joffrey, how old is Kermit Tully? Jocelyn was crying. Again. Not that Lionel Strong seemed to care. Nor did his daughter. The hand had still not recovered from the loss of one of his daughters, that was as plain as the day to see. There were dark circles under his eyes, and where he'd always been clean-shaven and neat, he now boasted a ragged beard and his doublet showed at least one stain. He gazed down at the babes. I had little doubt that Sarah had reported to him just how Alyssa would be referred to by everyone but Viserys. I knew this because he looked to be on the verge of weeping. I'd never really gotten to know Lionel all that well. He was my father's hand, promoted from Master of Laws after Otto's none to gracious exit from King's Landing. Even as Master of Laws he'd been the quiet type, the get on with your job and don't rock the boat type. I knew he'd grated at Damon's behavior just like knew he'd been all for executing him after his attack on me. He was Viserys' man. He'd sent his girls to me to tell me that. His friendship with Corlys came easily to him because he knew Corlys had a vested interest in following Viserys' wishes. Your Grace has been very kind to my family, he said, and his voice was rough with emotion. Then he cleared his throat and met my eyes. Like his son, he was a handsome man, although his looks were eroding under the steady tides of age by this point. Although I wasn't sure if I was allowed to be commenting on anyone's looks given my current style was a nightgown and only getting out of bed to use the privy. Healing from birth was a slow, painful and sometimes slightly humiliating process. Soon little Alice will be big enough to survive outside of the incubator, enthused Sarah from her seat next to me. At his daughter's happiness, he smiled, but it was quickly replaced with a look of pain. Sarah would likely never bear children of her own. That she had insinuated herself as the babe's chief protector should not come as a surprise to me, yet it did. She was determined she would love them as she believed Alice would have done. As she would not be able to love her own children. The king can scarce contain himself, he pointed out. Although I suppose Harwin cannot either. I thought Ser Laner would have to restrain him from how insistent he was at getting in here. Okay, what's Harwin up to now? He has to know there's no chance of an illicit romance by now, so what figures? I pushed the worry aside. There had been no note of accusation in Lionel's voice. I apologize, but the room is not so large as to hold Laris, Harwin, Sarah and yourself all at once. It very much was, and I think Lionel knew that. The truth was I couldn't handle all four of the Strongs at once. I will send them up to you and then Sarah can catch me up on how her day has been, said the hand. He cast one last look at the babes, bowed and left. Sarah gave me a small grin as she followed her father out. He had barely interacted with the twins during their time as my ladies. Alice's death had spurred him to be a much more involved father, it seemed. I was not allowed time to muse over the hand, however, because moments later, Harwin and Laris let themselves in. Harwin looked as well as his father did, handsome face ravaged by grief and loss. The twins and he had always been close, at least that is what I had gathered from Sarah and Alice's many stories. Laris looked as put together as ever, intelligent brown eyes taking in every detail of the room, myself and the incubator before coming once again to rest on me. Your Grace, Sarah has told us of your intentions regarding young Alyssa, he said when Harwin was silent for a beat too long. I fancied he looked a bit unsure by that. Harwin was usually the boastful, loud brother. It was unlike Laris to be allowed to take the lead in a conversation. It is one way of honoring her. It does not seem like enough, but it is a start, I said, and Harwin nodded, face spasming into a grimace. I hope that you will be able to see more of them both once she is out of the tank. Oh yes, indeed. We can visit them often, if your Grace wishes it, Harwin piped up, something of his old charm and enthusiasm returning to his features. Then they darkened once more. Alice would want us too. I apologize, Your Grace, Harwin has not taken the death of our sister well, said Laris, and I watched as Harwin's fists clenched tight. And you seem to care not. Our sister died. I flinched as his voice rose. Our sister died because someone wanted to kill the princess. I care, he said quietly. I will find who killed her, Harwin. Humph, never got why they were so fond of you. You know they filled my boots with horse dung when they learned I'd called you Limpy in front of her Grace, muttered Harwin. Laris settled back into his chair looking as if someone had just physically punched him. Yet you seem not to care when Alice dies. I did not dash, he started, but Harwin had moved on. Your Grace. He declaration had me turning to him in surprise. I swear to you I'll find who did this. She died for you, I'll not waste that dedication. I'm your man from this day to the end of my days. That is very sweet of you, Harwin, I said. But the prevailing theory is that it was Dornish poison that took Alice's life. The merchant that hired Otto's killers was very clear he was the Dornish factor in the city, said Laris, his voice hoarse. I questioned him myself. Maybe the Dornish did kill Otto, but I don't believe they tried to kill her Grace, he grumbled, prompting a raised eyebrow from myself and a strange look from Laris. Harwin was not given to his critical thinking skills. Had enough time in the city watch finally taught him a few tricks? Or had someone fed him that information? I admit the merchant was not forthcoming when it came to the poison, said Laris, dragging himself back into present. But I hear an investigation is still underway. A few servants have left the keep service since the tourney and now. Joffrey is hard at work tracking them down, I told him, and Laris actually smiled even as Harwin snorted in derision. The lickspittle that follows Ser Laenor everywhere, asked Harwin, and there was grudging respect in his voice when he mentioned Laenor. Evidently his duel had elevated him a little in Harwin's eyes, gone were the days when he'd levy an insult at every opportunity. Ser Joffrey is Lena Valerion's husband. The princess's good brother, said Laris, icily. He has come far in the past year or so, has he not? From second son to the husband of a dragon rider, father of a dragon rider, and in charge of much of our princess's household. He sounded almost gods be good, surely not. His brown eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw a spark of surprise. Oh. I'd forgotten about that, mused Harwin, breaking up Laris and I's staring contest. Mushroom told some really funny jokes about the wedding after we got news. This is the type of man my brother is, your grace, he gets his news from the court fool, sneered Laris, prompting Harwin to stiffen and his eyes to flash dangerously. Or used to. Mushroom was prone to adding details no decent man would find funny into his jokes, I said, and Laris' head whipped towards me. I must admit I did not hear his jokes about my good brother. Perhaps you would care to enlighten me, Harwin. Harwin flushed in embarrassment and squirmed in his seat, but it was Laris I was watching. He looked almost angry, and I bet I was right as why. It would seem Laenor was right about the courting, no doubt he would be thrilled to be vindicated. He implied that the rumors Daemon spread regarding you and Lady Lena were true. Anger hit me like a punch to the gut. Nobody had believed them, even Alicent hadn't bothered encouraging their spread to any real degree. I would warrant Mushroom pursued them because he was a nasty little shit too pleased by any kid of deviancy. Ah, his story went on to imply Ser Valerion an unknowing idiot, blind even to Ser Laenor's alleged proclivities. I can't imagine my father put up with that, I said, trying to stay calm. If Laris had killed Mushroom, well, I clearly owed him some flowers at the least. The princess understands, like I do, that any right-thinking man would find Mushroom's stories disgusting, said Laris. As it was, Mushroom was never eager to tell those particular jokes within the king's presence. It is ill done to speak badly of the dead, but I cannot find it within me to think well of Mushroom, I said. Harwin nodded thoughtfully. He was also telling everyone you slept with Ser Valerion after your return to the Vale. He told everyone that Ser Laenor would not bed you because you would not give him up. Or maybe it was because you stole him, said Harwin. Laris clenched his jaw and nodded. No doubt he'd been on Alicent's orders when he'd come up with that particular comedy routine. God's damn Alicent Hightower's imagination. He thought that any man not fully whole was an acceptable target of ridicule, he said, making Harwin snort and my eyebrows shoot up. Did you kill him because he insulted you, Laris, or was it because he insulted Joffrey? You're Alicent's man, I'm certain of it now. I have never seen even Laenor react that way at the mention of Joffrey's name. The question is, have I let on I know? Forgive me, Laris, Harwin, but I tire. Birth has me fatigued more often than not. I thank you for your visit though, it is always pleasant to see friends. The two were quick to nod and make their apologies, seeing the dismissal for what it was. Laris left with a thoughtful look on his face, but I could not tell, not truly, if he had made me or not. It was hard not to call for Joffrey straight away. I should be feeling victorious, triumphant, yet all I felt was a bone-deep worry. We'd often joked that Alicent's factor was Joffrey's friend, yet Laris had not been able to stop his reaction. If I was right, he'd killed Mushroom not to make himself Alicent's factor but because he'd insulted Joffrey one too many times. That spoke to obsession. So I waited, feigning a nap until I was certain that good manners would dictate the Strongs had left, and then I summoned Joffrey, Lena and Laenor. They were quick to attend on me, Laenor almost tripping over his own feet as he arrived. Are the babes well? He asked, recovering from his near trip with a distinct lack of grace. They are well, there is another issue I wish to discuss. He sighed in relief and dropped himself into a seat next to the bed. His sister and his lover arrived moments later, carrying a joyful Lucerys between them. The babe was placed into Joffrey's lap and Lena perched herself on the bed. I know who your friend is. That certainly got their attention. Especially Joffrey's. He'd been going mad trying to discover just who Alicent was relying on, that I had discovered it quite by accident during a visit from friends, would drive him up the wall with frustration. And it's worse than we thought. Who? Asked Laenor, hand resting on his hip where his blade should be. No swords in the birthing chamber was rule number 2 after wash your hands in the wash basin provided. Lari's strong. Silence followed that and then Laner gave a nervous giggle. That's not funny, Renera, he said when no one else said anything. Lena was watching me with a thoughtful gaze and Joffrey was staring at the back of Luceri's head. I could almost see the cogs of thought turning in his mind. It gets worse, I said and Laner groaned. He's got ideas of something more than friendship in mind. I'd say it's verging on obsession. Laner spluttered in outrage, shock and dismay. Joffrey's eyes finally left his son's head and met mine. You're certain? He asked. Lena dropped a hand to my leg and squeezed slightly, letting me know she was with me. He was very angry about the stories Mushroom told about you. Very angry when his brother implied you were forgettable. He was almost proud when his described your political rise. So, one of my people must have ended up in his care. They speak about me and I attract his attention. He kills Mushroom to become my counterpart dash, his lips twisted. He killed Otto. I wouldn't go that far, said Lena. Alicent wouldn't kill her own father, surely. They were struggling for power. Alicent was on the verge of losing everything. He killed Mushroom, oh fuck, he was the one that questioned Otto's killers. He questioned the merchant. My musing sent the Valerian siblings pale with the implications. Had Lares killed his own sister by accident? So, he ensured the war with Dorne, said Joffrey. Then he smiled, making my eyebrows rise in surprise. Evidently I wasn't the only one because he blushed a moment later at the attention he'd garnered from us. I know who he is now. Now we have an even fight. In the other room, Jocelyn was wailing again, coaxing her little sister into joining her, and I debated just flinging myself out of the window and ending it all now. Even after moving from the birthing chamber to my own bed, the need to keep the babes close meant their late night awakenings still woke me half the time, but even if, by some miracle, I slept through them, the maid was quick to summon me. I wish Lena had explained you had to feed them at night too. I don't know why I assumed you didn't. Sleep drifted ever further away and I groaned into my pillow. A rough hand ran over my back as Laner imitated me, hauling himself upright to stare across the softly lit room at the door that led to the room our children were housed in. He'd sat with me as I'd read to them after their bedtime feeding and had stuck around afterwards, banished from his usual sleeping arrangement by Lena pulling rank as Joffrey's wife. We both must have resembled zombies as we ambled into the room our children slept in. I fed Alyssa first, brain taking some time to properly waken up. By the time she had been safely enclosed back into her tank, I was wide awake. Even more awake when an angry Jocelyn was presented to me. Shall we take her with us? Asked Laner, still half asleep. Alice might have some chance at sleep then. Sure, I managed to say through a yawn that ambushed me the moment I opened my mouth. I took Jocelyn as he climbed back under covers, then positioned her between us. She did not quiet for some time. When she did, it was because she'd fallen back asleep. She's beautiful, he whispered. I couldn't help but smile at the look on his face. Do they cry like this every night? Yes, they do. They're babies. Mostly for food, which is easily dealt with. I really wish Lena had explained you needed to feed them at night. Sometimes I'll sit with them and tell them stories. What do you after? I doubt I can sleep now she has woken me, he asked, voice low. You get used to going back to sleep. Or falling asleep in the chair, I told him, giving his hip a playful shove with my own. He shoved me back with a chuckle. In between us, Jocelyn fussed momentarily, causing us both to freeze. I can take twin duty if you wish to spend time with Lena, he said finally after we'd relaxed. It is only fair since I have had a lot of time with Joff lately. He did not mention that a lot of their time together had been spent with Lucerys or running errands for Joffrey's renewed determination to become omniscient or close to it. Knowing who his rival was had lit a fire under him as fierce as any dragon's breath. He was determined he would not be played in the manner Larry Strong had played him ever again. I cast those dark thoughts from my mind and burrowed myself into the pillow, trying to chase the sleep Jocelyn had awoken me from. I'm fine at the moment. I would be awoken anyway for their feedings. He laughed at that. When will you resume your duties? He asked after his chuckling had died away. When I have healed and dropped some of this weight. Alanis has said I should resume them one at a time and slowly, I told him. I asked because, well, did you wish to join me for riding? Syrax and Sea Smoke? I suppose I could. The prospect was pleasing at least. I was still healing, but Alanis had opined that I could resume light exercises with her usual pointed tone. Riding Syrax once more, perhaps some brisk walks around the garden, along with cutting out the more unhealthy parts of my diet that being pregnant had allowed to make its way in. My first steps on the way back to fitness. It was with a brief pang of sadness I resolved to return to my usual fare of chilled fruit in the mornings. No more bacon, sausage, or eggs. And your marksmanship. Mother will be eager to start working on how it will translate to dragon back. I am barely skilled with the damn thing on the ground. I do not know what she expects from me atop Syrax, I complained and he shrugged. War with Dorn puts us all in danger, he said quietly. I did not see the reason for swords for a very long time. Now I am thankful I started working towards improving my skill long before now. Swords and bows are all very good, but how will you protect yourselves from the other dangers the Dornish represent? I asked, waspishly but genuinely worried. Joffrey is vetting servants, food tasters and guards. Was the quick reply, and I smiled. I should have known Joffrey was taking it as hard as I was in his own way. If any vipers or other desert wildlife tries to appear in my quarters, you will find me and my men ready for them. At my unconvinced face, he chuckled once more. Have Gerardis prepare antidotes to everything he can, I said. And then have Joffrey teach your men how to use them. Of course, your grace. His mocking assent got him a raised eyebrow and a sour look. His amused look fell and became serious. Do not worry for us, Rhaenyra. We will be atop dragons. We will not die, not when we have been ordered to return whole and healthy by those we love, he murmured. Not even his assurances would ease the fear in me though. Now, let us try and sleep. Tomorrow we will ride. What had sounded like an excellent idea in the dark of night was less welcome at morn. I was tired and wished nothing more than to return to my bed. I had been roused once more in the night to feed the children and then once just after dawn. As such, I was less appreciative of Laener's relentless enthusiasm for our ride. He had even cancelled his training for it. It is showing all of King's Landing that their princess is hale and healthy after childbirth, said Rhaenys, who had caught us preparing and invited herself along. My answer was a sour look as I swung myself into the saddle of the horse. It took a little adjusting in how I sat to be comfortable, but it was not nearly as bad as I feared with the padding Alanis had suggested. Our early morning ride still attracted attention though. Evidently, I was still in the people of King's Landing's good graces as more than a few stopped to cheer and wave as we made our way out the city to where Syrax, Sea Smoke and Malays lay on their stretch of claimed beach. From how the sand had been churned and the fact her gear was missing from the barn that had been raised especially for its storage, Lena had gone on a fact-finding mission to Dragonstone. Her request to spend the night with Joffrey had come out of the blue, so to speak. She and I had spent our nights curled up together, simply enjoying the other's presence and warmth rather than anything sexual. I had asked if anything was wrong and she assured me there was not, that she simply wished for one of her talks with him. Given that she mainly enjoyed those because she could spill everything she was feeling and not feel judged, I was not assured. Syrax taking to the air was enough to distract me from my worries at least, and I let myself relish in it, pushing her to fly fast and high. We soared over the oceans, danced through the clouds and swooped low over the fields. I may have been laughing with delight for a good portion. I could already feel the burn in certain parts of my body that told me even my brief stay in bed had offended some of the muscles I was used to employing when riding. It was a good burn though. After I'd gotten that out of my system, we both took yet more delight in showing off our aerial maneuvers to Rhaenys and Malays, attempting to nip at the older dragon's tail as a way of keeping score. Out of the many tries we both managed it once. I was quite proud of my Syrax as she brought us in for landing, her usual graceful glide managing to keep the spray of sand and dirt to a minimum. Not that Malays or Sea Smoke had gotten the message, their landings tore gouges across the earth and I mentally apologized to whoever actually owned the field we were partially camping on. Continuing my mission of showing the world I was on my way to recovering from the birth of my children, we put in an appearance at the Red Keep. Not the keep proper though, the training yards. Rhaenys had something to show us there, and from her barely contained excitement I did have to wonder just what it was exactly. Something that got Rhaenys this giddy had to be good. And I was not disappointed by her happiness because when we made our entrance, still garbed in our riding gear, there was my father. I wanted to laugh in delight at the sight of him, all dressed up in his padding and whacking away at Ser Marbrand with, what seemed to me, little grace or actual skill. I had not seen him pick up a blade and actually train since before grandfather had died. Even then it had been reluctant, a forced march to the training grounds every morning and then escape at the earliest possible opportunity. I had heard Balon go so far as to compare him to Vagon in those days. After Balon had died, Well, Mother had tried, but he was not to be persuaded often, and after Alicent had come onto the scene, that was it for his waistline. This business with Dorne has one upside, murmured Rhaenys, a kind of fierce pride in her voice. It has awoken the dragon in him. I have not seen him with a blade in his hand in a long time, I told her. She smiled. After that attempt on the twins, he carried Blackfire around for days. Word is he was ready to execute Cole with it before the man took the black. Again with that fierce pride. There is the rider of Balerion. Daemon always mocked him, but I knew. That drew both our gazes from the king to her. She smiled at our interest. When he gets over that damnable softness he has, he is a true dragon. You have seen his rages. He mounted the Black Dread. I knew the moment he did Daemon was wrong about him, she told us. Hadn't she, not a few months ago, declared him not fit to be king? I was saved from the unwise notion to point this out by her sighing heavily. Do not worry, Rhaenyra. I will stay close to him when he marches. A dragon he may be, but he is a wingless one. I'll make sure no ill befalls him, she promised. Besides, it is high time he and I put an end to our differences. You're having differences, said Laenor. I winced and Rhaenys raised a single eyebrow at my reaction. He likes to blame Corlys for all the ills in the world. Likes to blame you and Lena for all Rhaenyra's ills. He sees our family as eager for power that is not rightly ours. Make no mistake, if those twins had not yet been conceived when Corey made his accusation, Viserys would have used it to remove you from Rhaenyra's side. He sees you as an extension of your father. I glanced around anxiously, but no one was close, no one could hear her. Laenor looked thoughtful, his eyes returning to the king as he practiced. He believes Corlys still seeks the throne, I admitted. It was his initial thought to use Lucerys to keep the Valerians as a whole in line. Then he saw the little bugger and fell half in love with him. Typical Viserys, chuckled Rhaenys. Do not worry, son, I shall set him right. I was strong enough to master your father, and Rhaenyra is strong enough to master you. He will see that soon enough. I fear it will not be so easy, I murmured. He's had Otto filling his head with nonsense from the moment he was elected heir. She set her jaw as if I had just leveled a challenge at her, her eyes flashing dangerously. And now he will have me setting things right. I gave in as he noticed us and called a halt to his practice before making his way over. I tried not to feel too guilty as his smile threatened to break his face. Still, better her haranguing him over something than me. Sorry Dad, I tried. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.